Hi, everyone. Welcome to Precog Time, episode 5. Is this
Yep.
5 already?
Yes.
And we're really happy to be here with Virginia Lee Montgomery, who's phoning in from Austin, Texas. And we wanted to talk with Virginia about her recent piece and exhibition, Skyloop, which was up, or which
It just
was
closed.
it just closed. In quotes. What does closed mean right now? Anyway, but at the Lawndale Art Center in Texas, it was up from January 18th until just a couple of days ago, which was an immersive 4-channel film installation that where Virginia talked about her experience weathering Hurricane Harvey from a metaphysical feminist perspective. So we'll talk more about that over the course of the evening, but we just wanted to open up and say hi to Virginia and ask you how you're doing and what quarantine is like, what life is like in Texas right now.
Oh, thanks, Gabby. Yeah, so I'm talking to you all from Texas. I'm here located in Austin. On a side note, I kind of transit between Houston and Austin. I'm an artist who has a pretty mobile lifestyle. So when I'm not traveling on the road from like gig to gig for freelance work, I tend to find home either with family in Austin or Houston. And yeah, it's definitely a strange situation here in Texas. I don't know if anyone's been following the news as of just a day or so, but our governor Abbott is actually interested in opening up the economy starting tomorrow, May 1st, which has a lot of us pretty freaked out since Texas has really yet to be hit by the COVID wave. So there's a lot of anxiety in the air about what that means, especially if small businesses are kind of state mandated to be open, but consumers aren't actually populating the businesses, like how that could have a detrimental economic effect. But otherwise, yeah, it's just really quiet here. I mean, Austin is a university city, so with a lot of the students gone because of shelter in place, it's just really, really quiet. And what else can I say? Spring is in full force here, so it's really sunny outside. All the trees have leaves. All the animals are outside reproducing. I'm listening to like birds every morning get really excited. So yeah, it's definitely surreal for us, to be having one level of experience and then to be so aware of nature just continuing to do its thing, irregardless of our own viral issues.
And is there
Yeah.
going to be any policies in place to make sure that as things reopen, it's going to be safe? Are people mandated to wear masks or nothing? Like, no, just do what you want.
No, it's not full on do what you want, but the politics here in Texas are always they're always complicated. I mean, the state itself has a really intense libertarian streak where people just fundamentally don't want to abide by any type of government ruling, even if it is something that is put out for the public's benefit. Um, Wearing a mask in public places has been something that has been put into force. I actually don't know if Governor Abbott's trying to undo that. I don't think that per se, but I will say that there are a lot of people walking around without masks on, and I don't know if they're being arrested. There was also a protest that happened at the Texas State Capitol, not too far away from where I am right now, where there were a bunch of people with picketing signs saying like, "It's our American right to work, let us work." And I don't know if you saw that on the news, but
Yeah, do they have guns?
I don't know. I don't know. Unfortunately, Texas is like an open carry state, which, yeah, you can legally have a gun and walk around, with the exception of I think a handful of specific sites where guns are not allowed. There was, I know a lot of people that tune in to Zoom are faculty at different universities, and the University of Texas at Austin had a lot of press about a year or so ago when they said that it could be a campus with an open carry policy, meaning that you could legally walk around campus with a gun, which
That's
is
terrifying.
so scary and so terrible. And yeah, I mean, it's Austin, I will say, is an interesting place because it's always politically been a very liberal and democratic city ever since its inception. It's actually a pretty new, colonialist city. But, the larger demographic of Texas is pretty conservative and Republican and libertarian. So it's interesting that there's a large vocal contingency of people that want to have the economy reopened. But I don't know. I also wonder, like, are these people that are not directly interfacing with urban cities because they're in agricultural areas? But
Yeah. And
yeah.
what your exhibition was up while this whole quarantine was happening and it's closing now. Do you feel like people were able to see your videos, or it's not, how was your experience of having a show up while quarantine was happening?
Yeah, it's definitely a strange experience. The show opened up initially in January 18th, which now feels like 100 years ago. I mean, life just feels so different. Can you guys remember January when we were all filled with so much optimism for, 2020?
Yeah.
Best year ever. I know, I was really like rolling on the whole 2020 revisioning metaphor. But yeah, so for me, it's really strange because I was thinking about how around New Year's, I was just kind of gearing up as I was creating my install plan and, putting together all my sculpture and my tech. But yeah, having the show close throughout most of COVID has been, I mean, it sucks. It sucks. It sucks to definitely put together an immersive installation and then not have it open for people. It's the worst. I wouldn't recommend it. But the silver lining is that potentially the show Skyloop at the Lawndale Arts Center might actually reopen. I don't know when, because that's dependent on when the different museums reopen. But again, if the state of Texas is having like mandated reopening of everything, then it could be open again. So that's one of those things where I think I'll cross that bridge when I have to do so. I think like at this exact moment in time, April 29th, like I have no idea if the show's going to open again, or if 4 weeks from now, I'm just going to get a key to the space and on my own, I'll be installing. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. Have you guys talked to a lot of other artists that have also had their shows closed up during this COVID period?
Well, Patricia did, right? Like her show is
still up
right.
at the St. John's. It's St. John or John Jay College Art Gallery up in Queens. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has sort of been talking about like the radical shift in what it feels like to make art, like to just be, I mean, to be in general, but also like to make art, to see art, obviously, and like people's, even if their shows weren't up immediately, like they have plans that are now put on hold,
It's
like
a whole chain of events because I think we've been living in this scheduled world where it's like, oh, this happens. And then 2 months from now, this is going to happen. And now everything is pushed back or things are getting canceled.
I know. And you know what has me really anxious, and maybe you guys are feeling this or not, but I'm really concerned that, let's say hypothetically, when everything reopens in September, it'll just be like this massive wave of everything at once. Because I had other things that were supposed to happen this summer, from like graphic recording jobs, freelance gigs, to like art residency stuff, and pretty much everything's being pushed back. But then I'm like, is it all going to happen in November?
I don't think so. I don't think it is. I feel like this is a conversation for a different forum, but my sense is that the art economy and the art world is just going to be so profoundly shifted that when things open, it's going to be staggered, you know, like it's going to be in different, like probably there will be like an initial wave, but my sense is that it's going to like happen in drips and starts, and probably in different states at different times, given how like uncoordinated we are.
Oh, I
Can't
know.
agree.
I know. That's what, like, seriously, my show could be reopened, but I'm not bragging about that because
Yeah.
it's like not at my discretion, but the
Right.
discretion of a politically responsible governor.
So speaking of your show, I was wondering, I think we should just dive right in and start talking about your show, which is also the name of your piece, right? Skyloop. I guess each video has a different title, and the
yeah, but there's one video called Skyloop.
yeah.
So should we start with the clip, or do you want to talk about the?
Yeah, I think maybe Virginia, if you could introduce the piece, and I'll go through some of the images you sent us so people get a sense of what the work looks like, and then we can move over into showing one of the videos.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Great.
So if I'm waiting to see which picture first shows up on the screen, but yeah, so my immersive installation Skyloop. Okay, those are filmed stills.
Do you want here? I can.
Are the install photos?
I don't know that. No, I don't think the install. I don't know that you sent install photos, but I can find some. Here, why don't you, if you could introduce the piece, I'll find some references for that in the meantime.
Yeah, they're also in the PDF.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, so Skyloop is a large sensorial and immersive video art show that is up at the Lawndale Art Center in Houston, Texas, which for those of y'all that aren't familiar with Lawndale, it's this awesome, large community art space. It's an art institution. It's in the museum district. And it's been around for 40 years. So it's really been kind of the heart of the emerging and experimental Houston art community. They've put on a lot of awesome shows over the years. My exhibition Skyloop was initially born of a proposal that I submitted to Lawndale, wanting to craft together an art show that was generated from my memories of going through Hurricane Harvey. And it is an exhibition that also features a really beautiful essay written by Wendy Vogel, who is a New York-based art writer. Her essay is called The Butterfly Effect, which I mention in part because a lot of the exhibition was exploring this metaphysical theme of the butterfly effect and what does it mean to try to implement a really small change, a very small gesture that then will have a larger impact. And so taking up the notion of the butterfly effect, which as some of you all may know, hypothesizes a situation where like a little butterfly somewhere in the world flaps its wings and then across the world that actually, you know, aids in the genesis of the tornado. And I've always found that proposal to be very magical. And in thinking about, okay, we are in this current crisis that is COVID, but you know, also the Anthropocene, and the Earth is still going through climactic effect. I wanted to think about a way that I could analyze climate change in context to my own experience of going through Hurricane Harvey, but with this like investigation of how small changes, small gestures can actually amount into larger change. So I preface this all to say that a big part of this project, Skyloop, was actually raising native butterflies, which you can see in some of these images that are up on the screen. This project was a really deep dive into a lot of the memories of Hurricane Harvey, kind of where I grew up in Houston, which was devastated and flooded by the storm. I also collaborated with my mother and my grandmother, who are both from Texas and have seen many storms over the years. And wanting to collaborate directly with ecology. So the Houston Bayou, you know, the water, the rain, and butterflies. And so in one of the videos, you can see actually a small model bed, which is a shaker bed. And then I string up this line that has lots of little chrysalises hanging from it. And then a lot of the video is me documenting the exact moment in time that the little butterflies hatch out of the chrysalises. And I should say that the chrysalises in the bed are hung in a manner in which where a body would lay in a bed is actually an image of Hurricane Harvey. So I was very excited to invoke this kind of metaphysical, witch-like science experiment of, okay, I'm going to help neutralize a hurricane by just raising a bunch of butterflies and then releasing them into the world, documenting the process. So, you know, at least I can say at the end of this video art experience that there's like 24 new butterflies out in the world that will hopefully, yeah, rather than like generating storms will help, you know, they have the intention to neutralize them.
I have hearing you talk about it, something I was thinking about, and I was just thinking about like whether and how like your work is related to like being Southern as well, like the idea of honey, like, you know, whatever, like trying to fix things with honey as instead of doing it with sugar, and like this kind of association with like Southern gentility or Southern, like, is that a part of how you think about things, and is that like a specific version of feminism that you're interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that, like, say where Houston, Texas is related to Brooklyn, New York, is the same geographic distance as Paris, France to Moscow, Russia. And I throw that out there because, you know, I think oftentimes we think of the United States as being like one cohesive culture rather than understanding that the history of the United States, you know, since its early settlers to the colonials that showed up, is actually a patchwork of really different regional cultures. And I love that you brought up, you know, Southern thinking, because I've always been aware of that. I think as kind of like an outsider or a weirdo in Texas, people are always like, you don't seem like you're one of us. But when I lived in New York for a decade, people were like, you're not from here. So I've always kind of felt like, you know, my home place is like the dream world where like weird girls live. But that aside, yeah, I think there's a whole genre of, excuse me, there's a whole genre of wonderful literature, Southern Gothic, which really takes up this, often Southern Gothic literature is very kind of magical. It's often really depressing. A lot of it, you know, investigates themes and kind of the psychic horrors that exist within American trauma, whether it be like the horrors of slavery or deep poverty or sexism. And I think that there is I mean, I'm also just thinking of like how diverse the South is. In a way, it feels like a bit obscene to like stick like Florida and Louisiana and Texas together, because those are all such diverse cultures unto themselves. But I guess if you want to homogenize that area, I think there's been a real diversity of cultures that has always had storytelling be a really big part of how people make sense of things like hurricanes, tornadoes, rains, bayous. I'm just thinking of like Houston has a bayou, and if you know anything about bayou culture, which is often associated with Louisiana and French Creole, but Texas also has like bayou culture and was also colonized by the French. And there was this myth, for example, of these like little lights that lived in the bayou called the fille follet, and they were supposed to be the spirits of children that died before they were baptized. So I just feel like in a lot of the American South, there's always just been this very kind of colorful storytelling history. And you know, you're talking about like remedies, like putting honey on things to heal it. I mean, I think a lot of that also speaks to, you know, I think like the oppressive history of the South was that there was always like, you know, the upper class elite, like the horrible plantation owners, but then like everyone else who was either enslaved or horribly poor. And so it was a lot of just like making do with whatever you had around you. And so oftentimes it might do something like, I guess you're like sick. What are you going to do? You're like, well, put honey on myself and hope I don't die. And I know that sounds extreme, but I can cite like familial reference that the very aged hand that appeared in that image is from my grandmother. Her name's Lee, and my middle name comes from her. Like Lee in the same tradition as like Lee Krasner and Lee Lozano, and I'm like, yeah, Lee Bonticu. But anyway, her mother grew up in like deep, poor Appalachian, Kentucky during the Great Depression, and they used to do all kinds of like wacky things. Like I don't say wacky. I mean, it's just more like people trying to make the best of different situations with different materials.
Can you talk about your business witch persona?
Yeah. So business witch is a persona that frequently shows up in my artwork. She didn't make that prominent of a cameo in the Skyloop film series. She does appear.
And I feel like my hand is a little witchy.
Yeah, she appears as a hand, and also within the video stills that were up on the screen, there was one that was an image of me in the guise of business witch, dressed in all black with a single blonde ponytail, and she was crouched on the Houston Bayou. So she was there performing a magical ritual to, I mean, in my mind, I was thinking like, how can I just felt so sorry for the Houston Bayou, which is this like old ancient river system built of sand, and just thinking about all the storms that come through and like whip it around, and how brutal that must be to have to absorb all of that change constantly. And so what I'm actually doing on that hump of sand is I'm like massaging it. I was kind of thinking about like how a cat massages sand. So that's what business witch is doing. So I think about her as this individual who invokes these small gestures, that participates in these rituals of kind of setting up small systems. Like I guess to think of, if you're a philosophy nerd, if you've read about causal systems or causal chains, where it's like one action and causes a bunch of other actions. I guess to think of another visual metaphor, it would be like, think of like a domino set with like lots of different dominoes. And all you have to do is like flick the domino at the end to then watch all the change happen. So business witch is always doing things like poking with her finger, or cracking things, or scratching at things. But she is based off of my real life career I have as a corporate freelancer. I'm just going to change as the sun is coming through the windows here. I work as a corporate freelancer. As an artist, I've always had like a day gig my whole life. I didn't realize that was like unusual until I went to grad school at Yale, and I was like, who are all these artists that have never had like real world jobs? Like, so for many years, I have been working as a graphic facilitator, which is this really weird niche career no one's ever heard of. But essentially, I'm a professional whiteboard scribe. So I travel around to TED Talks or brainstorming meetings that different companies put on, like any type of company, from like Teen Vogue to Google. People are throwing out ideas. I'm in front of a big whiteboard. I listen to what they say, and then I draw them up. And when I do this, it's inherently really performative. I'm always very aware of my own physicality, because pretty much all of the contemporary working world, especially in the corporate realm, is like very male dominated. So it's always really interesting to walk into a room and be around like a bunch of dudes and be like, wow, this is a really weird experience to be so aware of the boundaries of my body. Because so a lot of the business witch kind of persona does come from this vibe of feeling continuously alienated and very conscious of like what your physicality is and how it functions as a symbol. And so she has this like blonde ponytail that's almost like a body surrogate. And then to further complicate that, for the past 8 years, I've also been traveling around the country to these different, business meetings and staying at different hotel rooms that might be like adjacent to the Atlanta Conference Center. And with me, I always travel with this like blonde ponytail prop, which just like looks like a blonde ponytail, but it's detached and it's 4 feet long. And I'll like take photos of it on a bed in my hotel room in my downtime, or I also am really interested in using hotel rooms or just kind of anything around me as a studio site. So I will spend the evenings after work
Where did
making
the ponytail come from?
Where does it come from? I mean, it's in reference to like the long yellow stuff that grows out of my
your
head.
Hair, right?
Oh, what?
It didn't come from your hair.
No, it didn't. But that's a really good question because I get that question a lot. It's actually, I'm bending down as I'm getting my.
There with you?
What?
Is the ponytail in the room?
Yeah, actually, yeah, let me grab it. It's just upstairs, but I'm going to grab it. I'll be back in like 20 seconds.
Virginia, I'm going to show your film clip while you're getting the ponytail.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Great.
Sounds good. You're either going to see, are you going to do the 4-channel one or the butterfly one?
I'm going to do butterflies. Unless
Yay, okay.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
All right, y'all. Sorry, y'all. Hold on.
Oh no.
I'm having a little bit of a technical glitch.
Gabby, if we pause it and let it go for a little bit.
Yeah.
And we can talk and then come, like for a second and then come back.
Perfect. All right, a brief interruption, an intermission.
Intermission, yeah, absolutely no worries. I've been doing a lot of Zoom recently, and I know how glitchy video dense stuff can be.
We'll just let it load.
There. Oh, is it loading? All these videos are also available online. I'm a big believer in that video art should be accessible to people and not hidden behind private links. So if you go to my website, you can also watch butterflies on repeat. Yeah.
Um,
Little kids really like the video, so if anyone here has kids, go for it. Nothing
that's
scary
good.
comes out.
I wanted to ask, so where did you get the butterflies from?
Yeah, so I should just preface this by saying that I'm a pretty big nerd, and so I've always been someone that's existed kind of in like the innards, the deep intestines of the internet on weird message boards where you can find stuff. And there's actually a huge community of people that are really into raising moths and butterflies. So you can find an entomology supply website that is regional, so you can get native species. And that's how I first got started, is I got them in the mail. They overnighted them to me. You can either get eggs or caterpillars or chrysalises, depending on what life stage you want. And I raise them, and it's simultaneously a kind of stressful and a really low-key pet to have, because for the most part, like when they're in their chrysalis, they just kind of stay dormant for a while. But when they're in the caterpillar stage, they require a lot of upkeep. But yeah, the internet, that's where you get them.
So do you build a special room? Because also I was wondering, when you shoot it, you're using this crazy camera, and like how do you set things up so they're like, are they always being watched? Like how do you get that moment that you need?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for asking, because a lot of my work is incredibly labor intensive, and I think in a way that I've always really identified more as a crafter, someone that comes out of a vocabulary of craft and making. There's a whole group of people that do video art that work with like production teams, or, you know, outsource the labor to other people or use CGI. But yeah, I do everything old school with like, it's a camera and you're watching a real bug. That's not a CGI thing. How I get the setup, one of the benefits to working in macro is that you don't need a large set, because, for example, if you're using a macro lens that is, I'm going to hold up my iPhone for a model. But if like, so this is my iPhone, but if like the butterfly is only this big and the actual rectangle of your screen is this big, you can just dial in the focus of the camera to only be this size. So you can work in a really small setting, which I throw that out there because I know a lot of people are probably stuck at home like us all during COVID. And I think maybe for some people, they're working in a home studio situation for the first time. As I mentioned earlier, I've always kind of had a day job, and I've actually, aside from grad school, I was someone that never really had like dedicated studio space, just because I was traveling so much and moving around. It didn't seem economical to me to spend hundreds of dollars a month on a space I would never visit that was huge. So I learned to work at a small scale. So to quite literally answer how I set up those like brightly colored planes that I shoot in front of, I use a lot of backdrops, paper, and foam core board. And I picked up those skills with from working from someone that did like prop styling, food styling. If you've ever seen how people, you know, document plates of sandwiches for menus, it's kind of fascinating how they can take like a really boring cheese sandwich and suddenly make it look really sexy with the right lighting in the backdrop. So I do that, but with the bugs. And then like, how do I get them to come out? Yeah, there they are. Yeah, so that nice like blue curving thing is it's just like a backdrop, and it's just lit well. I'm all about DIY. There's a lot of fantastic techniques effects that you can get by just using simple materials. And then also you can spend a lot of time in post-production and Final Cut Pro really dialing the color correction. So, you know, you're like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, hone in on the blues and then up the saturation. And
have the butterflies ever behaved in an unexpected way?
Yeah.
You're like, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, working with them is hard. Okay, first I'm going to say that if you look at the butterfly birth bed with all the little chrysalises lined up, there are actually, I think, about 10 chrysalises. I used about 20 in this video, but only 3 butterflies actually appear in the film, and that's because those were the 3 that I managed to get on camera. I would just wake up really early on the weekend mornings and set up my camera and hope I would get one. And I kind of plotted out the days knowing that there was a window that they were going to come out. But needless to say, sometimes I was out of town or traveling and the butterflies would emerge. And while I was traveling for work, I would leave the butterflies in my mom's care. So I was like, well, release it because I'm not going to be in town for a day or 2. So it's really hard, but it is like a labor of love. It's like any type of intense art making practice. Part of its value is the time that you pour in. And then to answer your question about the butterflies do something unexpected, I mean, sometimes when they like pop out of the chrysalises, they don't do it like gracefully and then like hang on and then let their wings come out. Sometimes they just like shoot out. They just like poop themselves out too fast. And then they're like these little like grubby things with undeveloped wings that are like flailing, and then I have to like pick them up and then put them on the chrysalis. And I'm like, okay, you just sit here and let your wings
do your thing.
Yeah, but they're not, I mean, they're beautiful, but I will say insects are not, I shouldn't say insects. Butterflies they're not like high order intelligence animals. They're like profoundly beautiful, but they're not.
How long
they're
do they live?
Yeah. What?
How long do they live once they're born?
It depends on the species. Certain species, I think at most can live up to about 2 months. Others will just live a few days.
And do they just reproduce and then they like die?
A lot of them, yeah, which is like pretty trippy to think about, that the majority of the time that they are alive is when they're in that caterpillar state. Like they really, a lot of them, they just kind of emerge as the full butterfly with their wings, so they can like fly to a different tree, have sex with a different butterfly, lay some eggs, and then that's the end. Like it's amazing that like so much of the butterflyness is just oriented around sexual reproduction. It's kind of amazing.
And so something we've been talking about the butterflies, but if you watch any of Virginia's videos or like see the installations, one of the things which is clear is that you use a lot of repeating motifs. Like the butterflies come up in a lot of different works. The drill making a hole is something that happens all the time.
You're like, yeah, the drill is right here.
Like the honey.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you mentioned the drill. Hold on up. Yeah, so the drill shows up in my video and has for quite a few years. I have my BFA from the University of Texas at Austin, and I actually made video art when I was like a little baby 18-year-old, but I didn't make work for a few years because I really was doing like the full-time graphic recording, working in a creative agency for a while. And it wasn't until like I hit a mental block there that I got really into video art, because I just had so many thoughts and feelings I needed to express. And for quite a long time, I've always loved DeWalt drills, but not so much as sculptural objects to like erect big things. I'm not really interested in like big erections of things. I'm not really interested in like the masculine bravado of like big sculpture, but I am really interested in like tools that do things, especially when they make holes. And I think that is so cool. The idea that you can have a tool and it will just make you a hole into anything. So this device really functions more as like a gestural character within a lot of my films. And you will see that between different very kind of surreal segments, if you think about how when you're sleeping at night and your mind is dreaming and you might have like one weird transition to another dream, I often think of like the hole saw drill on my DeWalt drill as being like the portal maker between dreams. So it allows me to go from like one place to the next. And again, part of my interest in that is also this very like psychoanalytical notion of like, what is a whole? We all come from a whole, you know, we all go through birth. We essentially go through a canal, and you know, and I love that too. And also with the butterflies, it's like they do kind of come out of a little hole, and then they start back at the
holes they have dots on their wings.
Yes, they have eye spots. I'm so glad you picked up on that, because that was a really big part of the Skyloop project as well, was like really keying into this metaphysical, subterranean, symbolic language that exists not only within our colloquial speech, like the eye of the storm, but also looking at nature, where how, you know, butterflies and moths have the eye spots on their wings. Yeah. And I've been doing a lot of obsessive research about why that is. And y'all, it is so fascinating, because I know y'all are graphic designers, but think about that. That had to be like a stable, consistent sign that communicated something over the past 150 million years, because that's how old butterflies are. Like, that blows my mind to think that nature found a way to signal information, as abstract as that might be, but just saying like, hey, this means something. And then it continued to evolve with that. I don't profess to say like,
Eye of the hurricane. There's like the eye of the hurricane, the eye in the butterfly, and then your eye too.
Yeah, and then my eye. Yeah, there's a lot of eyes. So there is like this poetic overlap. I mean, the eye of the hurricane, of course, is like a English language kind of poetic terminology, but in physics, you know, the hurricane does form with like this hollow center, and then again with the butterflies, like the butterflies really are trying to emulate eyes of predators on their wings. I think it's so trippy.
Should we try to watch a little more of the video, or do you think it's like?
Yeah, we can watch a little more.
Did it download a little?
I mean, it's sort of touch and go, but we'll see what we can do.
Is it getting glitchy?
Oh, is it glitchy?
It's moving.
That's okay. We can just let it like glitch along. But like I said, this video is available on my Vimeo and on my website. My website is just my full name, virginialeemontgomery.com. And the video is called Butterfly Birth Bed. I think if you type that into Google, it'll kind of immediately come up. It's a weird enough combination of words, but I think I own like the SEO analytics on it.
Hold on, sorry. We can also, if you're okay with it, we can link it to the video once we upload this talk as well.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
But I was gonna ask about the bed, because you made a miniature shaker bed, and why you decided to pick that bed for the butterflies to grow on.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were two reasons why I did that. One was conceptual and one was practical. So conceptually, the Shakers are this really interesting early American spiritual sect that developed, I want to say, in like the 1700s, 1800s, and it was founded by this woman named Mother Ann Lee, and she really was a champion of equality. She was really interesting because she proposed the idea that, you know, there was no division in intellects between the sexes, there shouldn't be divisions of labor. And the Shakers, the group that she helped found, were these somewhat eccentric but deeply spiritual people that lived throughout northern Maine, all through New York. I think there were some in Pennsylvania and then some down in Kentucky. And a big part of their spiritual practice was creating and creating crafts. And so most people, they know Shakers more as like an aesthetic furniture term for kind of, as they call it, primitive American kind of wood furniture. But I've always been really interested in the Shakers because they were a group of people that weren't misogynistic, they weren't racist. I mean, really, to me, I think that's so fascinating to believe that so many of these beautiful progressive ideals that we like to uphold as, you know, beacons of developed society in our contemporary age actually were existent as far back as the 1700s in the United States. But there's just a lot of like political oppression that has not enabled those narratives to continue onward. But I like it because I think it's hopeful to remember that, you know, throughout the course of, if you think about like who was an artist so many hundred years ago, it could have been some really cool old grandma that was all about acceptance, who just wanted to like weave this ornate basket with you. So I really like that energy. I wanted to summon that, so I did make a small shaker bed out of balsa wood. The other practical reason I did it is because I knew that when butterflies hatch from their chrysalises, they do like to hang upside down and let their wings unfurl. So I needed a bed that had posts on it. And I was like, hey, I should make a pencil bed. But I'm like, oh, what design motif of pencil bed? I'm like, I don't want like a Victorian pencil bed. I want a shaker pencil bed. So yeah, I got really excited about that, you know, crafting history. And I also think it's really, for me, it's just really inspiring again to think about many generations of creative practitioners that have been around in North America. I feel like a lot of contemporary art just focuses on the last 50 years. And I feel like recently I've just been trying to really look at all varieties of object making. So beds, yeah.
So we have a few questions that have come in. I think it's about time. And anyone else who has questions for Virginia, send them to me via the chat. But the first question from Ben is, how do you attach the chrysalises to the strings?
Okay. That's a good question. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have a chrysalis right now to hold up and model. I should also say that those butterfly chrysalises I was working with, they're small. Butterfly chrysalises are small. Like a moth cocoon, a Luna moth cocoon, it can be like this big. But a chrysalis is like this big. It's like an inch. They're little. When the butterfly decides to make its chrysalis, it usually, right before it really starts the spinning, it puts a tiny little piece of filament on a stick or a leaf. It's like a little tiny string. So then when I tied them up onto the line that was on the bed, I basically am grabbing the butterfly string and then winding another piece of string around it and then hanging it. It's hard. It takes a while. But it is possible. The other method is to like pin it in place. That's what you will frequently see at a science museum, but I don't like to put pins anywhere near chrysalises. It just makes me anxious. I'm gonna stab it or something. Yeah.
Cool. And Barbara wants to know about the Shakers. What happened to them? Are they still around? Where are they in the political spectrum? And I think the best quote is, "Are modern Shakers gringo hippies?"
That's an amazing series of questions. I love that.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. I have never heard the Shakers described as gringo hippies, but I love that. They still exist, but I think there's only 2 of them left, and they live in Maine. And I think they're both in their 80s or 90s, so they're very old women.
Also, they're celibate, right?
Yeah, they're not allowed to have sex.
They're celibate, which is basically how they started to quite literally die out. I did some historical research and found out that I think in the 1930s, the United States passed an adoption act stating that religious organizations could no longer run direct orphanages to raise orphan children. And that was actually how a lot of Shakers, I guess, initially came to be, is that they would like raise orphans, and when the kids came of age, they could either stay on the farm or they could leave, and a lot of them chose to stay. But after that, yeah, it just died out. I don't exactly know how that works, because I think there's still like Catholic orphanages that exist today, but I think it was, I don't know, but yeah, there's 2 of them left. But yeah, there's actually a couple of really cool documentaries about the women, because they are really interested in this practice of like singing and worship that channels the spirit of God, which is pretty interesting. I don't know. And then where do they fall politically? I mean, Shakers have always been pacifists, so they don't support war. Yeah, they don't like sex, but otherwise, I think they're pretty accepting.
They believe in modern day miracles, and like
I don't know,
maybe. Right? Yeah.
I don't know if they do. I mean, it's also hard because it's one of these kind of diverse spiritual enclaves, but I think the Shakers in the 1700s became different than the Shakers in the 1900s. I'm also by no means like a religious studies expert, but I'm just really interested in the fact that they, you know, in the 1800s were really interested in like manically dancing in circles, and they had gender equality, and they just loved making crafts and furniture. And I think that's just fascinating how different.
Well, their name came from that, right? That they literally shook, like they had like ecstatic gatherings where they got together and like raved or something.
Yes, they raved, and they really believed that the leader, Mother Ann Lee, was like the reincarnate version of Jesus, but Jesus came back as a woman who was going to hang out with them and make crafts. And I'm like, this is
do you happen to know any of the names of the documentaries, so we can kind of list them as references?
I do not know any off the top of my head. I don't know any off the top of my head. I know that the dance collective called the Wooster Group in New York City just a few years ago did a recreation of a lot of historic Shaker dances, which are really interesting. It's a lot of like running and stomping and like throwing themselves in the air in circles. So I wonder if like the Wooster Group might have documentation of that dance performance. The Walker Art Center a few years ago put out a catalog on Shaker drawings. And I'm trying to think the documentary. This isn't a documentary, but there's that beautiful sequence from the American Ballet Theater, I think, with Appalachian Spring, and Noguchi designed the sets that were inspired by Shaker architecture in the 1950s. There's that beautiful ballet. I don't know if it's much of a documentary, but yeah, those are just off the top of my head. There's a lot of references out there.
Have they been good at documenting their own history?
You know, I can't answer that. I actually have a girlfriend who's an artist. She's a painter named Caitlin McBride, who I feel like
she's interested in that.
She's very interested in the Shakers and actually has spent time out at a former Shaker colony. So it was the actual physical structure where they lived, and I think now it's an art residency.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's in New Lebanon. But as far as documenting, it's hard to say. I mean, I think there are people that are interested in the Shakers mostly as kind of an interesting, eccentric part of American craft and dance and folk history, but I don't know if they themselves are much interested in it. I think they're like nuns. They just do their thing every day. And
Alex Chowaniak wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about your personal experience with the canoe in the Sky Loop installation, and how that ties into your thinking or the show.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to get more questions about the exhibition Sky Loop, because it is really hard to have an immersive exhibition captured through images. It was a large space that you walked around, and there was a large 18-foot aluminum canoe that was inside the exhibition site. And that canoe was significant because it's an object that's been in my family for a while now. It was first purchased by my grandmother, and it's called a Grunham canoe. It's made out of aluminum that was left over from World War II. They used to make a lot of airplanes out of aluminum, and when the war ended, they had a surplus of material, and they actually made these beautiful canoes from it. And that canoe has been an object that my family and I have been canoeing in down the Buffalo Bayou in Houston for quite a while. So when Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston, and I grew up in West Houston, which the bayou is a big part of the ecology there. The Buffalo Bayou watershed is like right under my parents' house, and there's a creek in the backyard. Anyway, when the neighborhood flooded, we actually went around when it was safe to do so in the canoe. So because a lot of the Sky Loop exhibition was this kind of material investigation of memory, I was very interested in just laying out this device that had facilitated a really specific type of material memory that I had encountered around Hurricane Harvey, which was the sensation of like holding onto the sides of this aluminum canoe and like feeling the cold nature of the aluminum as like my mom was in front of me and paddling, and we were paddling around the neighborhood, just kind of assessing damage and seeing if there's anything we can do to help. On a side note, I should say that we were really lucky that we had very, very minimal flood damage, but our next door neighbors, just their house was, I don't know, 10 feet away from ours, was completely flooded. And the reason that is just because some houses have slightly more foundational support than others. And so the neighbors actually ended up evacuating to our place. Then the next morning we went out with the canoe to see if there was, I don't know, anything helpful we could do. But yeah, the canoe was a big part of the show, and people were invited to sit in it and actually have the experience of, you know, feeling the size of the body dwarfed by the size of the canoe. The bottom of the canoe was filled up with Buffalo Bayou sand, so you could similarly massage the bayou while sitting in the canoe. And I really like this idea of there being kind of a spatial inversion of, you know, usually a canoe is this device that mediates you away from the sandy floor, the bottom of a bayou. You know, you're like in the canoe, so there's water in between, so you're not in contact with the sand. So I like that. Sand in the canoe, you could touch it, you could sit in there. And from the vantage point of the canoe, you actually could watch one of the videos where you saw legit iPhone footage that I took while my mom was like paddling the canoe and I was behind her during the storm. So yeah, it's really tactile that way.
Can you talk about the other sculpture in the room? There was like a foam with a stone.
With a rock in the middle. Yeah, so in the center part of the gallery was a large pad of blue memory foam, which is scaled at the same size as a California King American mattress, which I think off the top of my head, I want to say that's like 86 inches. I don't know. It's very big. It's a very big mattress. And there's a stack of 5 of them. And in the exact middle of the mattress pad is a large whirlpool stone. This is a sculpture, is one that I initially debuted back in 2016 as a part of my thesis at Yale. It's called Headstone. And it's a sculpture that I have showed a couple of times now alongside video art. And the reason why it keeps holding resonance is because a lot of my video art comes from this very dream logic, subconscious unpacking of these different experiences that are sometimes hard to place and name, the relationship between the body and a bed, and the bed is a site where at night the subconscious can open and some type of insight can come out. It's important for me to also facilitate that for viewers. Video art can be really overwhelming, especially non-narrative video art like mine, and I'm very sensitive to that, and I always try to think about what are devices, physical things that I can put as seating so people have a place for their body to relax and be at peace, while cognitively they're just kind of being bombarded with these different sensorial snippets of information. So one can sit on the memory foam, feel the weight of your own body kind of sinking into it. And then there's this big, beautiful, super smooth rock in the middle, which is a rock that was carved by nature. So again, throwing back to like water and forces that are making different attributes of our natural world. You can touch that too. It's very tactile. You have to sit on it. And then what else can I say? Yeah, memory foam. It's a bizarre substance. I also love the fact that its value actually is in its ability to forget. It really doesn't have any memory. It's kind of a terrible name for it, but it was developed by some marketer after memory foam was released from NASA as a material that was developed for the space program to actually kind of cradle the bodies of astronauts as they were being blasted into space. So memory foam was adopted on the commercial market and then given the name memory foam and sold in American households. I mean, it's totally, wow. It's a strange material. I know, it's cool. It's like, I also am kind of into its weird late capitalist history as like a thing that's supposed to facilitate your subconscious to open and your spine to have better alignment so you can sleep better. And I like that weird performative history to it. Yeah.
That's great. Well, if it's okay with everyone, I think the formal part of this talk can be over, and I'm going to unmute everyone, and you should, we can hang out and talk for a little bit. I don't know how long Virginia can stay around, but we can just sort of open it up to the world, let chaos ensue.
Everyone goes.
But yeah, you're all unmuted now, so yeah. Thank you all for coming.
I was banging my pot a couple of minutes ago. Hello, everyone.
Hey! Thanks for coming.
Virginia, how has it been with your job since you can't travel anymore? Has it just been like, let's switch to online? Like now you have to like draw and on Zoom?
I have drawn on Zoom. I mean, to be honest, I've been one of those artists that's been gravely impacted by COVID. My income has just plummeted because people aren't meeting and congregating, and that is what allows me to really have value to a group, is to be able to perform a simultaneous real-time creative translation service for a group of people. I have been doing it a little bit on Zoom. I essentially have like a document cam hooked up to my laptop that then faces down on a mini white sketch pad, so that way I can do like whiteboarding on a little scale. I'm trying my best to adapt to it, but I definitely miss traveling. For me, it's just really weird to not be getting on an airplane every other week, because that's just been the way that I've been navigating the world for many, many years now. So I don't think I've ever been in like this one place so long since I was in grad school, you know? Yeah.
Into that job. I had never heard about this job before.
Yeah, most people, I know, most people haven't. It's a really niche thing, and everyone always thinks that I invented it, and I'm like, no, it's actually been around since the 1970s.
Can you talk a little bit, who started this job, or how did it just started because people needed a visual being in meetings, or?
Yeah, so I've done some research into its history, and the history of graphic recording is one that came out of the 1970s in San Francisco. It came out of the genesis of brainstorming that happened between architects, computer engineers, and designers. And they were trying to share information in a way that was really efficient, but also I'm making some speculations here because this is somewhat just passed down from scribe to scribe. But yeah, it was kind of the genesis of an architect and a computer engineer just trying to talk about something as a business idea. And they picked up a pen on a whiteboard and then started to make itemized bullet points. And we're like, hey, this is a really effective way of having a productive brainstorm meeting. So, and then the next part of like how it then continued to grow, one consultant in the Bay Area really loved the concept and always promoted it as a helpful part of an ideation session. And then apparently in 1995, the Wharton Design Shop, which I guess is like a design thinking chapter of the Wharton Business School, had a bunch of graphic recorders show up and draw pictures of the different business students sharing out ideas. And I guess because this particular Wharton Business School meeting was also attended by a lot of the major consultancy groups on the East Coast, suddenly the cat got out of the bag as it being a way to share ideas. So since 1995, it's just been kind of growing in popularity. And I started doing it 7 years ago, and it was actually when I was working at a innovation and market research firm in Manhattan that I kind of first learned about it as a creative service offering. And then I was like, I want to do that because I have an art degree. So it's super niche, but people do it.
So like you were working at an advertising, wait, say that again. What?
I was working at this place in my early 20s called What If Innovation. I was at the New York offices for this British consulting group that did experimental market research and led creativity building seminars for corporate clients. And I fell into that job because I graduated in 2008 from undergrad during the time of the recession where there were no jobs anywhere. And after a very painful year of having 3 part-time jobs, one of which was doing visitor service audio guides at the Guggenheim Museum for $8.50 an hour. And another one was working at a cupcake bakery. If anyone remembers the cupcake craze of Manhattan, I frosted a lot of those cupcakes in the early 2000s. And then another part-time job I had around then was working for this really wonderful art and garden nonprofit called Wave Hill that's up in the Bronx. And I used to do tours there. So I had a year in 2008 of working 7 days a week, doing 3 part-time jobs. I needed health insurance. I was applying to a bunch of random jobs on Craigslist. And one of the jobs said like, are you creative? And I was like, yes. So I sent them my CV. And it turned out to be a junior admin position at this very eccentric market research firm called What If Innovation. And then I worked there for a few years and just kind of climbed my way up as a creative project manager. And then I saw graphic recording one day in a session. I was like, I'm going to do that. Then I could be a freelancer.
Yeah.
Travel.
And
Yeah.
it's great because you can also learn about so many different industries from experts in the industry. So I feel like you're always learning, right?
Yeah, I am always learning. I feel like I really kill it at cocktail parties because I always know a little bit about everything. But I'm not an expert. That's the thing. Like I've never formally gone to business school, so I can only fake it for about 15 minutes. But I do get to learn a lot of stuff. And over the years, attending the different conferences that I've gone to, it's been a really surreal journey into kind of the diversity of businesses and conference culture across the United States. Like I mentioned earlier, I did a job with Teen Vogue, and Teen Vogue one time had a conference of of teenage Instagram influencers. So I one time got to be in the room with like 200 of the world's most important teenage Instagram influencers. While there are all these like fashion brands, they're also trying to like compete for sponsorship deals. And it was just, it's a really surreal setting. I mean, I'm someone that really does not follow the fashion world. I basically just live in a uniform of Uniqlo and just don't follow fashion at all. But to me, it was amazing to like watch all of these teen moguls. And then the next week I might be at a big data conference for IBM, and it's a bunch of people that work in sales and big data talking about the different advancements of their Watson AI, and they're trying to pitch those ideas for the smaller enterprise clients that want to use IBM's, suite of software services. So in my brain, it's like Monday, teenage influencers, Friday, big data engineers at IBM in Seattle, and it's just, it creates a really weird feed of information, but you do learn a lot.
I gotta go.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you so
But
much.
Thank you. I love butterflies, as Gabby can tell you.
That's my mom.
That's so great. Well, check out the Butterfly Film. It's very relaxing. So.
Yes. And Gabby, your lace mask is now finished.
Thanks, Mom.
Very weird. Very beauty Chicago weird. What can I tell you? I love you all.
You're in
Stay
Chicago.
well.
Stay safe, Chicago.
What?
You're in
Oh,
Chicago?
no, she's in New York. She's in New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's in New York.
Yes, yes, yes.
Bye.
Bye, yes, I know. I know. Let me get out of here.
Virginia, can you talk about the sound in your video? Because I was wondering, I was like, do you have microphones on the butterflies? Like, some ASMR recording going on?
Yeah. So I do a lot of the sound design and post-production. I do have a small Zoom field recorder, which is, I'm realizing now it's really funny that the field recorder brand is called Zoom, because now Zoom is so associated with this digital conferencing interface. But I have a field recorder that I can use to kind of spot capture sounds or capture environments. And I'll do that a lot when I'm trying to create a sonic index of a space. So I'm trying to get the sound of what it sounds like to hear a cicada on the Houston Bayou permeating through a thick fog of humidity. That sounds like something specific. So the field recorder is helpful in that instance. But to speak to what you heard about the butterfly hatching out of the chrysalis and it making that really crunchy noise, I actually add some of those sounds in. And for that sound, I actually crunched up eggshells and recorded it.
Like
Yeah.
old style, like in the old style sound.
Yeah, it's really fun to make weird sound effects like that. But no, I mean, it is possible to have a microphone that could capture the sound of a butterfly crunching, but I just don't have access to those resources. It's just, all this equipment exists. It's just super expensive.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's out there though.
We were so impressed. I know Kelly was really impressed with your camera too.
Yeah, like what kind of lens do you
Oh
think?
yeah. So I have a great camera that it's a consumer grade camera. You can buy it at Best Buy. I mean, it's not like dirt cheap. It's not like $100, but I think now you could probably buy a used model. I don't know how much. It's a Sony 5600 4K camera. I can't imagine it's more than like $4,000, which again, I know that's a lot of money, but in the world of cameras, there's like $20,000 cameras.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend the Sony 5600 video and still camera if you want something that looks really professional but costs, I think you could buy a used one probably for $2,000 or $3,000 and then get good lenses.
Yeah. No, my boyfriend's
really good
also a
lenses.
video artist, so we have cameras galore in this house. I think he's now been recording out the window just because we're stuck in home. So he's trying to figure out.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I totally feel for you. You say your partner or your roommate?
No, my partner. Yeah.
Your partner? Yeah. Yeah. I have my lights set up on my macro stage, and I've also been filming inside a tent because we're all stuck inside.
You're like, are you working on
I'm gonna mute you,
something,
MHF.
like a new video?
What'd you say?
Are you working on a new video right now?
Yeah, I am. I'm preparing a new film that is all about moths. So in a previous work, I hatched beautiful green Luna moths, and I really loved working with them. And so I'm returning to that again. And I've also been working with 2 other related species to the Luna moth called the Cecropia moth and the Polyphemus moth. So they are really big, beautiful moths that are native to North America. And I've been filming them hatching, and hopefully.
She got stuck.
You froze.
Virginia, we lost you.
Well, hi, George and Heidi and everyone. Hi, Karen.
What's up?
Hi, Esto.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Karen.
Hey. I'm looking up Virginia's work
coming back.
now. All right, looks really cool.
Yeah, the work is really good. Oh,
She's gone.
yeah.
Maybe she'll come back. I guess we should wait for her to come back.
Yeah, we'll give it like a couple of minutes.
I'm waiting for Flo to be like, isn't it dinner time? Are we?
I mean, yeah, 10 more minutes and
I have like
dinner time.
I had a snack time. I have to like cook collard greens now for like an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh.
Too long, right?
Yeah.
Hello. Oops, sorry. I've just unmuted you.
Can you see me?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, I've really enjoyed the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just thought during this like little intermission, I would tell you how much I appreciate you all broadcasting this.
Oh,
Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Oh, wait, who are you? My name is Gabby.
well,
Okay, I'm Mary, and just to completely confess my involvement, I am Virginia's mom.
I had a feeling. I was like,
Yeah, well, I've been watching and really enjoying tonight. So you all are very good moderators. And I don't know where my daughter just disappeared to. So I'm in a different city than she is.
oh,
but,
really?
oh, yeah. I'm in Houston, but thank you for this forum is outstanding.
Oh,
Oh, we're really happy you could join. You're welcome to come every week. We do this
do it every week.
I'm sorry, my laptop died.
What happened? Is she gonna come back? And then your mom was like, "Hi."
This is my mom, Mary. She was in the Skyloop video. She's one of the hands. And what are you doing?
Hey, and the back of my head is famous, so give me attribution there. All right, well, I'm gonna kind of go away now.
Love you, Mom.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. You all are amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Aw. Hi, Mom. Love you.
Bye. Mute.
It's like, can't mute.
You could just close the screen. That will also kill it, Mom.
Oh, she's still listening.
She's
I
still
think.
here. She just doesn't want to be.
Oh,
She doesn't want to be on camera.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. What were we talking about?
The cameras.
Something else.
Oh, I was going on a long tangent about different moth species I'm working with.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
hopefully going to have a show at Hess Play-Doh Gallery
Okay,
in New York
cool.
City in the fall. So November, if you're in New York City, please come out, Hess Play-Doh.
Do you have a website where you could order moths?
George. You're like,
Okay. Yes, there's a couple of places you can go. eBay is a place where you can go to find things. There's also a message board called like Insect Classifieds. It's like Craigslist, but for bugs. If you want to order moths, like say Luna moths for your own personal use that you can't release outside, but you can like let them fly around your apartment, you can go to this website called carolina.com. And they are a website that actually supplies science teachers or medical professionals with like everything that is science related. So, you know, when you go to the doctor and the doctor has, like, I know this when I go to the gynecologist, the doctor always has like this model of like a vagina like in the office. And I'm always like, where does that come from? This website, carolina.com.
oh,
They sell like anatomy models, everything, test tubes, and they sell, I mean, they like, if you were going to be a science teacher and teach like a earth science or a dissection class, or show your kids like how Luna moths grow, you can, and they have pretty good prices. I think you can get like three cocoons for $20. It's like,
I was gonna ask, so with buying these species, is there an illegal market or things that you shouldn't be growing? Or I don't know how it works, you know, because
no, that's a really good question. There definitely is an illegal market. I don't go there. I'm really interested in like native North American species. I don't know.
But is that like a kind of thing that will show up, like advertise on a bulletin board maybe, or I don't know. I'm wondering, I follow this Instagram and it has these crazy butterflies on it, and they say they sell them. So I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like something felt sketch about the Instagram, and I was like, why does this feel wrong?
I mean, I'm not going to say that you should get those butterflies from that person, because I don't want the Food and Drug Administration to like raid your apartment. But
I guess it could be like tracking. I don't know.
I don't know. There are, if you type in, I know there's a place in Florida called the Shady Oak Butterfly Farm, and they sell butterflies that you can, like if you're having a wedding or a funeral.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Yeah,
that's a thing, which I know they supply, like you write to them and they'll overnight you like a box of butterflies. But that place is located in Florida. I don't know. I wouldn't buy it.
No, I was like just like interested. I was just interested that I was like, oh, I didn't even think that this could be like, I don't know. I guess I was thinking also like, you know, the Joe Exotic thing where you think of like, oh, there's actually like this crazy huge market of people that are buying tigers for their like gardens. And
I know.
I'm still not sure why that's crazy. Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Why you would do that? It's like a
no. Why it's legal? Like why is it legal?
Yeah. I think it's illegal though, right? Like a lot of the like breeding is illegal.
I don't know. There was a tiger lady, maybe like 20 minutes from my house.
Really?
She had like 100. Yeah, 100 tigers.
And was it open to the public like a zoo?
No.
Okay, it's just for fun.
The only reason anyone knew that it even existed was one got out.
Wow, that is so scary.
They thought it was from, she lived right by Six Flags. So they thought it was from the like safari, but it wasn't. It was hers.
What happened when it got out?
They probably killed it.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
they probably killed it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad. Okay, well, I don't think butterflies are as like
dangerous,
loaded.
No, but I was thinking like, for example, there's things like stick bugs are illegal in New York, for example.
Oh, really?
I think you can't buy a stick bug, and there's also like hedgehogs. You can't have hedgehogs as pets because they're considered wild animals.
Wow. Okay. That's so interesting because stick bugs are native to Texas. We actually have a couple of varieties.
That's cool.
Yeah. So anyway, but when I do go to a couple of the sites to get moths and butterflies, oh, sorry, the sun's coming through. There are things on the website where it's like, we can't ship these to Oregon because it's illegal in the state of Oregon to have this. But I do think that one of the good things about being in Texas is that it's like a primary migration route for so many creatures that, you know, go into Mexico and then down in Central America and South America, that I feel like almost everything transits.
It's going through Texas. That's good.
Which is kind of great because, yeah, except tigers. We don't have any tigers transiting.
That you know of. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's tons. I'm sure there's like a Joe Exotic of Austin, Texas, just like 5 miles away from me.
Yeah.
I hope not. Yeah.
Spend more time in Texas these days in New York?
Yeah. I've been down here a while. I made the decision about a year ago to kind of make Texas my home base. I really like kind of working out of here. Although I will say, when I was traveling every week on the planes to graphic recording jobs, it was pretty easy for me just to kind of, you know, hop through New York on a return flight and see friends. And so I think a lot of people didn't realize that I wasn't living, but I would like go to art openings every 3 weeks.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's kind of all you need to do, right? It's like go up on the scene so people know you're still existing.
Go back.
I tell friends, I'm like, if you send me a Google invite like 6 weeks in advance, I will be there.
Good.
I'll like, yeah, but I really miss New York.
What's it like being an artist in Texas? Is it like a very different art scene?
Yeah, yes and no. It's definitely a much smaller scene. Interestingly, a lot of the art scene folks here in Texas have previously lived in New York, or were out in LA, or they did their MFA at CalArts, or they did their MFA at VCU. And so there's still a network. It definitely, I don't know. I feel a little weird sometimes, but I feel weird everywhere.
Even in New York, were you too like nice or for New York? Was that the issue?
So like I remember being in New York and I'd be out partying with people and I'd be like, you know, it's midnight. I'm ready to go to bed.
Flo understands that.
I know. I'm always like, it's time to go to bed. Like,
Flo, you and me can have a slumber party.
Yeah, it's like by 11, I'm tired. You know.
I know. So I don't know. I feel like the nice thing about Texas is people don't, because the bars close kind of early here. So yeah.
But Austin
kind
has
of
a crazy drinking culture, though.
Yeah, Austin's a big party city.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of craft beer out there.
What'd you say?
A lot of craft beer and stuff out there.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's a really fun place to visit. Seriously, it's like the #1 like weekend party getaway city right now. I mean, aside from COVID.
Yeah. Well, now they canceled what was it? Austin City Limits, right?
Yeah.
And that was like a big thing.
Yeah.
And I guess like a lot of the Austin culture is about being together, right?
Yeah. People in Austin love live music. They love food festivals. It's like I said, Texas overall is characterized by having a somewhat conservative culture, but Austin, it's very communal and about people being together and doing things. And yeah, the tourist economy is a big part of the Austin economy as well. So when the music festivals cancel, it's like I have friends that are pretty stressed out because that's their primary economic, like, money-making season.
Mhm. And do you think it's just gonna get pushed back, or other things will pop up or something?
I don't know.
I can tell because I know a lot of concerts are canceled till next year.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I mean, I haven't looked at it too much. I mostly have just been paying attention to museum shows, and it seems like they're just kind of getting pushed back. But
Yeah, they've also closed a lot of like film festivals and stuff like that, unfortunately.
They have film festivals on YouTube now. Did you see that? They're like Sundance and like Berlin and a bunch of other festivals are doing like a big YouTube moment where everyone can see the films for free, which is good.
Cool.
I mean, I think with that stuff, like those are things that can be seen online. So I don't see why they should be canceled in that way, because like, you know, like a lot of people have worked for a long time on films, like, and then they're just canceled for the year, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
I know. Though I haven't been to a lot of film festivals as a participant, but it is so nice to have that communal experience of screening a film and doing the Q&A and going to the party and meeting people that are crazy talented. And just,
Well, so because you send a lot of your videos to film festivals, have you been able to travel around to different festivals?
I've traveled to a few. You know, I'm always really grateful when my work gets in. You know, there are not a lot of film festivals that have an experimental film or art film category. There really aren't. And so where I can submit is pretty limited. However, I have gone to the Ann Arbor Film Festival in Michigan. That was a great one. That had a great scene. I mean, they're, I think, the oldest experimental film festival in the US. So there's just a wonderful community there. And last year I got into the New Orleans Film Festival in their experimental film category, and shout out to them. That was amazing because one, you're in New Orleans, like in the heart of it, and they put me up in a hotel room, which like blew my mind because I'm like, what? You're like paying me as an artist, you're giving me a free place to stay and like tons of free drink coupons. Like I was like, what is this world? But yeah, New Orleans Film Festival was so awesome, and I met so many cool people. I think that's probably my favorite one.
That's
And
a great one.
Have you gone to that one, Kelly?
No, I haven't I went to New Orleans. I didn't go to the film festival. I did a road trip from New York to California a couple years ago. We stopped by Austin, and we also went to New Orleans and so on and so forth. I was amazed by the street in Austin that feels like New Orleans, where they shut it off and it's all the bars. We went to find a speakeasy around there, Midnight Cowboy. Have you been there?
Yep. Yeah.
The drinks there are very good. But and then we walked and I was like, where are we right now? People were just like throwing up outside and anything. And I was like, what is happening? Like,
yeah. People party super hard in Austin, and it's literally become like the new Miami bachelor party, the new like Las Vegas bachelorette party. Like it's kind of crazy, but it's really good for the economy here. So
I can imagine. But yeah, it was just a funny thing to walk out to. Like we felt all sophisticated having our fancy drinks, and we walked out. We're like, what is this world right now? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. People go really crazy. Though again, there's really good food here and really good drinks. And it's like half the price in New York.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like, well, do you think because I've read that it was getting gentrified. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, it is. It definitely is getting gentrified. Yeah, I mean it's a bummer because it's just going to get more expensive. But I don't defend the gentrifiers, but I just feel like that's like
because certain companies are coming there, like.
Yeah, basically a lot. There's like legitimately bumper stickers that people have on their cars here in Austin that say California, go home. Because so many people from the California Silicon Valley tech world are moving to Austin, and Apple has a huge office now in Austin, and I keep hearing that they're just going to relocate permanently to Austin, Texas. So,
wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of tech here now.
Well, that I think we went to Arizona, and Arizona is also getting like a lot of bio gentrification. You know, all these like companies that move because it's really cheap, and then
Yep.
you know, it becomes an unlivable place for everyone that was there.
Yeah, that's exactly what a lot of my friends are reporting, in that there was this version of Austin that was championed in, you know, the movie Slackers with like Matthew McConaughey, and it was this really, really cheap, laid back city. And I think steadily since the 90s, it's just become more and more expensive. Dell Computers is based out of Austin, and I feel like Dell kind of put Austin on the map as like a tech place. And so I don't know.
Something about also that like tech companies want to be in certain cultures. And I think that's what happened in New York. They really wanted to come to New York. And then there's always like New York is like pushing them out.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I mean, tech destroyed San Francisco.
Yes, Kelly, you are so right on. And a lot of people are afraid that's what's going to happen to Austin, is it's just going to be like San Francisco 2.0, where like all the artists and creatives get priced out. I'm trying not to think of those terms, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, I guess like a lot of things have been in place, and now with coronavirus, I think also maybe things will change. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I don't know. It's hard. At the same time, like I think it's really great that Austin is becoming a larger, more diverse city. So it's like on one hand, I don't support gentrification, but you know, Austin gets critiqued a lot for being super white. And if there's something that can help the city become more expansive and cultural, I mean, that's great too. So yeah. Austin gets like, you know, the way Portland is, white hipster kids.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm an optimist, I think.
Yeah. Who knows?
Hopefully.
Well, also, I guess like that's the whole thing with like tech, is that it's so white male dominated that that's also not a diverse like community really, but that's what they're aiming for, right? Is to. And I was gonna ask, as a woman, like, how do you feel? Because sometimes you must be the only woman in a room, right? Like,
yeah, I am quite frequently. It's a strange feeling, especially to be in this contemporary era where, you know, when I first started being a graphic recorder 8 years ago and taking note of the fact I was the only woman in the room, I remember thinking like, wow, this feels like what second wave feminists used to write about.
Yeah.
But, you know, I still think our country has a long way to go in terms of gender inclusivity in the workplace. And there are particular industries where it is like a, you know, women identified majority within the room. But there's a lot of industries where that's not the case. And I think it's not so much like industry specific as it is just the broader workforce of, there are just so many dudes out there in business. And I think, you know, being in the arts, being in a creative field, I feel like there are so many women in the arts, but pretty much every other field, it's not that way. Like if we all worked in like logistics or airplane manufacturing, or I'm imagining like a parallel where you're an airplane engineer. So yeah.
Like in domestic labor jobs and like healthcare services and teaching, like anything soft is really dominated by women.
All the essential workers.
Like, there's no protections. Like there's not a lot of protections. Like I don't think you can uncouple that. Like.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It's true. I don't know. Did anyone else? I've been watching that show through Gabby's Hulu, the Miss America show. It's really good.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
It's about these, I guess it was about like equal rights amendment and all the different feminists and how, you know, their relationships to each other and how they each saw feminism in a different way. And then there's this very conservative figure, this woman that's wants to be a lawyer and she wants to be powerful, and like she keeps getting rejected, so she starts to go against other feminists.
Really?
And becomes really famous, and it's like she's doing all these horrible things just to be powerful. It's so crazy.
That reminds me of Taylor Swift. Yeah. Oh man.
Exactly. She's weird.
What is, because what is she? She's like capitalist feminist? What is she?
But I mean, it's like, it's biographical.
What?
She's a real lady.
Because she had like hard relationships or something?
No, but just like Phyllis Schlafly, like that was
Oh
just
yeah.
thing. Like that was her whole, like, I don't know, there's so many weird, like, a lot of my students are really into Camille Paglia, like go through a Camille Paglia moment too, which is also kind of, it's like a stage of like feminism or something.
Yeah, with Taylor Swift, I just think it's so egregious how overtly performative her feminism is. I mean, I think it's been a while or so since she's gone on a stage at some Academy Award, and it just looks like she's curating other people around her to be some type of virtue signaling. And I don't know. I think I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift.
You know who is it?
Yeah, I think there's something really kind of creepy going on there. Oh, but speaking of being a woman in tech, one of the most fascinating stories that I heard about is how specific tech companies are now trying to grapple with the fact that they have women employees in high-powered directorship positions in their mid-30s or late 30s, and they don't want those individuals to take off for maternity leave. So they're offering free egg freezing services to maintain
but
those
I'm
women in
surprised.
the workplace. And I think that's fascinating because, again, there aren't a lot of women in general in these like directorship leader positions within tech, but then, you know, it's like the body is the body, you know, it's like,
Yeah, like even like if you like freeze your eggs and then you don't have that experience, it's still like a very different experience.
Yes, and admittedly, I don't have children, so I can't speak too much about, you know, the pregnancy or even the egg freezing process. Yeah. But I just thought that was fascinating how human resources /
they're so desperate to keep the few women they have.
Yeah, and they don't want to, because it's interesting. It's not even that they would lose them to motherhood. They just don't want someone to step out for 3 months and take maternity time.
That's wild.
I know, it's really fascinating. So I'm curious if in the future,
the women though feel like they have to do it, you know, and then because also it's like once they leave, it would be hard for them to come back. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't, you know, read any type of anthropological research following up with those individuals, but yeah, I can imagine that it's super hard to go from working 80 hours a week to caring for a kiddo, and then yeah, I'm sympathetic.
Yeah, definitely.
But I've always been really interested also in just reading about stories about how like businesses, when they have to put in a breast pump room, a feeding room, like where does that go within the structure and the architecture of the building? And yeah
like it kind of has to be hidden. It's not like, okay, no one could do that in a meeting, you know, it's too real. Like,
wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be amazing if like
well, that's the whole thing about women is that men don't ever have to worry about like, oh, I'm getting old, like I gotta do this, you know, or if I do this, what's gonna happen? Will I have my job? Like if men, like if they have a baby, they know they can just keep working, right? Like,
I mean,
yeah,
too. Like they should get paternity leave too. Like
I mean, sometimes they do
distribution, you know, of the work of like raising an infant, which doesn't sound like a one-person job, you know?
Crazy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, it makes, yeah, absolutely. I think I lost my train of thought for a second, but I'm
Okay.
I'm just like imagining like some guy in a business meeting being like, okay, well my body is now the site of like protein production liquid for my, just
God.
Well, that was like an Octavia Butler book where men have babies, right? I think there was a science fiction book where it was like the men became the carriers, so the whole like power structure changed, and like I don't know.
read that book, but there's the wonderful Ursula Le Guin book, The Left Hand of Darkness, about the gender swapping planet of individuals. And then she also wrote a great short story in Birthday of the World that similarly is like the puberty rite where you like switch it between genders. And I thought that was wild.
What's it called? The Birthday?
It's called Birthday of the World. It's a collection of short stories by Le Guin. That, like the idea of having two puberties is like wild to me.
But then we all have like life crisis every year. Like I'm like, is my sister going through a crisis, or is it just like life?
Puberty. Anyway, y'all, I have to run. This has been amazing. But when I end the meeting, because I'm the host.
Okay. Dinner. Nice.
Thank you all so much for hanging out.
Thank you, Virginia. Bye.
Everyone be safe and healthy. We'll get through this.
Yeah. See you in fall.
Yeah. Good luck prepping for the show.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly, Flo, and Gabby. You guys are awesome.
You're awesome.
Bye.
You're a good fan.
Yeah.
Good
Cool.
fan.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, let me stop recording.
Bye, Mom.